Rain poured down in relentless sheets on that fateful autumn evening in the bustling city of Evergreen, where the neon lights of downtown blurred into a hazy glow against the darkened sky. Amid the chaos of honking cars and hurried pedestrians splashing through puddles, a young woman named Elena huddled under the meager shelter of a bus stop awning, her threadbare coat soaked through and her backpack clutched tightly to her chest like a lifeline. She was 24, but the weight of the world had etched lines of exhaustion into her face that made her look far older, her hazel eyes dulled by months of sleeping on park benches and scavenging for meals in alleyways. Homeless for nearly a year after fleeing an abusive relationship that had stripped her of everything, her job, her savings, her sense of self, Elena had learned to blend into the shadows, invisible to the world rushing by. But on this night, as the wind howled and the bus was nowhere in sight, a small figure emerged from the gloom, a little girl no older than 6, her blonde curls matted with rain, wearing a too-big raincoat that dragged on the ground and carrying a stuffed bear under one arm. The child stopped right in front of Elena, her big blue eyes locking onto the woman's with an intensity that pierced through the storm, and without hesitation, she uttered words that would shatter Elena's fragile existence. "You need a home, and I need a mommy." The simplicity of the statement hung in the air like a thunderclap, freezing Elena in place as the rain continued to drum around them, marking the beginning of a bond that neither could have foreseen. If you believe in the power of kindness and second chances, hit that like button, drop a comment below sharing your thoughts, share this video with someone who needs a reminder of hope, and don't forget to subscribe to Kindness Speaks for more stories that touch the soul. Elena's heart skipped a beat as she stared at the child, whose name she would soon learn was MIA. The girl stood there unwavering, her tiny fists clenched against the cold, as if she had rehearsed this moment in her mind 1,000 times. Elena's first instinct was to look around, scanning the deserted bus stop for any sign of a parent or guardian, but the street was empty save for the occasional car slicing through the puddles. Mia's words echoed in her mind, stirring a mix of confusion, fear, and an unexpected warmth that Elena hadn't felt in ages. She knelt down to the girl's level, her voice barely above a whisper as she asked why MIA was out alone in such weather, but the child simply shrugged, her lower lip trembling not from the cold but from a deeper sorrow. MIA explained in fragmented sentences that her daddy worked long hours at the factory and often forgot to come home, leaving her with neighbors who barely noticed when she slipped out the door. Her mommy had died 2 years ago in a car accident, a fact MIA stated with the detached numbness of a child who had cried all her tears already, and since then, life had been a series of empty promises and lonely nights. Elena felt a pang in her chest, recognizing the hollow ache in Mia's eyes. It mirrored her own, from the days when she was just a teenager watching her parents' marriage crumble, leading to her own spiral into instability. As the bus finally rumbled into view, Elena hesitated, her mind racing with the dangers of getting involved. She was barely surviving herself, scraping by on odd jobs and charity handouts, her nights filled with the terror of vulnerability on the streets. Yet, something in Mia's gaze pulled at her, a silent plea that made Elena offer her hand, suggesting they ride the bus together to somewhere dry, at least for a little while. Little did she know, this simple act would unravel the threads of their separate miseries and weave them into a shared tapestry of struggle and redemption. The bus lurched forward into the night, its interior a dimly lit sanctuary from the storm outside, where fluorescent lights flickered overhead and the hum of the engine drowned out the patter of rain on the windows. Elena and MIA sat side by side on a worn vinyl seat, the girl's small body leaning instinctively against Elena's arm as if seeking the comfort she had long been denied. Elena's mind swelled with questions and doubts. She had no home to offer, no stability, just a makeshift bed in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town where other homeless souls gathered for warmth. Her days were a relentless grind, waking at dawn to line up at the soup kitchen, then wandering the streets in search of recyclable bottles or temporary gigs like cleaning storefronts for a few dollars. The abuse from her ex-boyfriend, Mark, had left scars not just on her skin but on her spirit. He had controlled her finances, isolated her from friends, and when she finally escaped, she had nothing but the clothes on her back and a bus ticket out of that toxic life. Now, Facing Mia's innocent trust, Elena felt the weight of her own inadequacies pressing down like the rain-soaked coat she wore. Mia, sensing the woman's turmoil, began to chatter softly about her dreams, of a warm bed, homemade cookies, and someone to read her bedtime stories, painting pictures of a life Elena herself had once yearned for as a child in foster care. The bus ride stretched on, taking them farther from the city center, and as stops came and went with no one claiming the girl, Elena realized she couldn't just leave Mia at the end of the line. With a deep breath, she decided to take her to the warehouse for the night, promising herself it was temporary, just until she could contact authorities in the morning. But as they stepped off the bus into the drizzling darkness, Mia's hand slipping into hers felt like a fragile anchor, pulling Elena toward a path she wasn't sure she was strong enough to walk. The warehouse loomed like a forgotten relic on the edge of the industrial district, its rusted metal walls echoing with the distant rumble of trains and the occasional cough from those seeking refuge inside. Elena led Mia through a side door, the air thick with the scent of damp concrete and unwashed bodies, where a small group of homeless individuals huddled around a barrel fire for warmth. Eyes turned toward them curiously, but Elena's familiar face earned nods of quiet acceptance. She had earned a reputation here as the quiet one who shared her food when she could. Settling Mia on a pile of blankets in a corner, Elena scavenged for some canned soup from her backpack, heating it over the fire while the girl clutched her bear tightly, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and fascination. That night, as Mia drifted off to sleep with her head on Elena's lap, the young woman sat awake, staring into the flickering flames, her thoughts a torrent of what-ifs. What if Mia's father was looking for her? What if involving the police led to Mia being placed in foster care, a system Elena knew all too well from her own childhood horrors, shuffled between homes where kindness was scarce and stability non-existent? Elena's struggles deepened in the days that followed. She couldn't afford to feed an extra mouth, her meager earnings stretched thin, and the constant fear of discovery gnawed at her. She took Mia with her on her daily rounds, teaching the girl to stay close and quiet, but the child's presence brought unexpected challenges. Shop owners who once gave Elena scraps now eyed them suspiciously, and the cold nights seemed harsher with Mia's shivers echoing her own. Yet, amidst the hardship, glimmers of change began to emerge. Mia's laughter when Elena made silly faces to distract from hunger, or the way the girl hugged her tightly, calling her, "my almost mommy," chipped away at Elena's walls. For the first time in years, Elena felt a purpose beyond survival, a spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, she could rebuild her life not just for herself, but for this lost soul who had found her. Days turned into a precarious week, each one a delicate balance of evasion and endurance as Elena navigated the underbelly of the city with Mia in tow. The challenges mounted like storm clouds. Elena's health began to falter from lack of sleep and nutrition, her body aching from carrying Mia during long walks, and the emotional toll was immense. Nights when Mia cried for her daddy, forcing Elena to confront her own abandoned dreams of family. She scoured public libraries for computers, searching online for missing child reports, but nothing matched Mia's description, leaving Elena torn between relief and dread. One afternoon, in a crowded park where they begged for change, a kind stranger, a middle-aged woman named Clara who volunteered at a local shelter, noticed their plight and offered sandwiches and a listening ear. Clara's stories of redemption inspired Elena, planting seeds of possibility. She spoke of programs for homeless women, job training, and even transitional housing. But trust didn't come easy. Elena had been burned before by promises that led nowhere, and the fear of losing Mia to the system paralyzed her. Suspense built as whispers in the warehouse hinted at police raids on encampments, forcing Elena to move them to a derelict motel on the city's fringe, bartering cleaning services for a room. There, in the dim light of a single bulb, Elena shared her own backstory with Mia, weaving tales of her childhood dreams of becoming an artist, dashed by poverty and poor choices, her voice cracking with vulnerability. Mia listened intently, her small hand tracing patterns on Elena's palm, and in those moments, the bond deepened, transforming their struggles into shared strength. Elena began to fight back against her despair, applying for aid at Clara's urging, her applications a beacon of tentative hope amid the uncertainty. As winter's chill crept in, the narrative of Elena and Mia's lives intertwined further, each day a cinematic unfoldment of highs and lows that tested their budding connection. Elena secured a part-time job at a diner, thanks to Clara's recommendation, washing dishes in the steamy kitchen where the clatter of plates drowned out her worries. The work was grueling, her hands raw from hot water and soap, but the steady paycheck allowed her to buy Mia warm clothes and simple toys, moments of joy that lit up the girl's face like sunlight breaking through clouds. Yet, challenges persisted. Mia's father, it turned out, had been arrested for neglect after neighbors reported her disappearance, news Elena gleaned from her overheard conversation at the shelter, plunging her into a moral quandary. Should she return Mia to a broken system or fight for custody herself? The suspense escalated during a stormy evening when social services knocked on their motel door, tipped off by a well-meaning but misguided acquaintance, their stern faces demanding explanations as Mia hid behind Elena's legs. Elena's heart pounded as she pleaded her case, tears streaming down her face, recounting how Mia had chosen her, how they had become each other's salvation. The workers left with promises of investigation, leaving Elena in a limbo of anxiety, her nights filled with vivid dreams of loss and reunion. Change accelerated when Clara introduced Elena to a lawyer pro bono, who guided her through the labyrinth of legal aid, helping her file for emergency guardianship while Elena enrolled in night classes for her GED, her mind buzzing with newfound ambition. Mia flourished under this stability, her drawings of happy families adorning the motel walls, each crayon stroke a testament to the healing power of love. Elena's transformation was profound. The once broken woman now stood taller, her eyes regaining their spark as she advocated for herself and Mia, turning strangers' pity into alliances of support. The climax arrived on a crisp December morning, when the court hearing loomed like a judgment day, the sterile courtroom a stark contrast to the warmth Elena and Mia had built. Elena dressed in her best thrift store outfit, her hands trembling as she held Mia's, the girl's wide eyes scanning the room filled with officials and witnesses. Testimonies poured forth, Clara vouching for Elena's progress, neighbors recounting Mia's father's failures, and Elena herself, voice steady despite the emotion choking her, describing the bus stop encounter that had rewritten their fates. Suspense gripped the air as the judge deliberated, minutes stretching into eternity, until the gavel fell with words of approval, temporary custody granted, with paths to adoption outlined. Tears flowed freely as Elena scooped Mia into her arms, the weight of relief crashing over them like a wave, washing away years of pain. In the months that followed, their lives blossomed. Elena moved into subsidized housing, her art classes reigniting her passion, while Mia started school, her laughter echoing through their modest home. Challenges lingered, financial strains, emotional scars, but they faced them together, their bond unbreakable, a living proof that kindness could mend even the most shattered souls. As spring bloomed, Elena looked back on that rainy night, marveling at how a child's bold words had given her not just a home, but a family, inspiring her to volunteer at shelters, paying forward the second chance she had received. If this story has touched your heart, reminding you of the profound impact one act of kindness can have, please like this video, share it with friends and family, and subscribe to Kindness Speaks for more tales of hope and humanity. And before we end, I'd love to hear from you. Comment below with the line from the story that moved you the most, or share a personal story of kindness that changed your life. Your words could inspire someone else just as this story has inspired you.